Hi, everyone. Welcome to another mock interview session. We are live with Shivangi. Shivangi is applying to a bunch of schools next year. So this will be a very early prep for you, Shivangi. By the way, Happy New Year. And we are all pretty
Please.
glad 2020 is almost over. So
I
that's
know.
something to celebrate for sure. Yeah, so how this will work, Shivangi, is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You're going to give me some answers, and then I'm going to give you some feedback. And hopefully that helps and that sort of gives you something to work on. I think a lot of these stories will also feature in your essays. So when you write those
Mhm.
essays for next year's applications, this will give you something to think about. Okay, so before we jump into a bunch of different questions, why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Shavik. Thank you. So I'll quickly give you a glimpse of right from the graduating days. I'm basically from Lucknow, India. Graduated in 2016 in engineering information technology from Cummins College, Pune, where I happened to kind of top the class in the top three, outgoing batch. So owing to the academic accomplishments, I had an opportunity to work with Barclays Bank early on, where I took the role of Cognos developer. Uh, Within a year, I kind of realized that I think because keeping in line with my long term goals, it was very important to leverage my technological knowledge with that of management. So I made a quick switch within 1 year to the role of technical delivery manager. I was promoted within a year, and then I've been leading a mini team since then. Apart from that, that's been pretty much my work history. I am a tabla player. I've been playing tabla for the last 12 years. I have my own tabla channel. I make covers for tabla. That's one. I also work with my mother for a digital startup. We've just, in fact, started 6 months back. So I'm working on the marketing aspect of that front. So yeah, these three activities primarily take my time, and I've been involved in these activities for quite some time now.
Cool. Okay, great. So a couple of good things in your answer that came out was I think the progression from Barclays was good. I think you talked a little bit about like some of your technical elements coupled with some of the other things that you have done. I think that was nice. I think there also was your other interests. I think the tabla thing is really cool. I would
Mhm.
recommend though, just just for people who do not know, just talk about how it's a percussion
Okay.
instrument, and like it's a more traditional Indian percussion. So just
Mhm.
give that background a little bit, and then the digital startup is also pretty cool. Okay, so here are some of the things that you can maybe improve. So I keep telling this to people that like when you introduce yourself, your interviewer almost always has your resume, right? So they sort of know where you went to college and where you work, what's your role, etc. um, so yeah, I mean, you do mention them. It's not like you skip them altogether, but this is actually a lot more about why you took these decisions, like why you chose to go to the college you went to, why you picked the workplace that you are in right now, and what are some of the things that you do outside of work, and why you do them, right? So I would push you a little bit to talk about those connections, right? So
Mhm.
and look, I fully understand. I was born and I grew up in India, so I sort of understand that motivation. That hey, I did engineering because I everybody does engineering, right? So I get it, but I think you definitely had options to do something else. So just walk me through. For a lot of people, it's like I did engineering because I just like science or like math, or I just generally like problem solving, or yeah, so stuff like that. Just weave that in a little bit. Or you could maybe talk about like maybe your role model was an engineer, and that sort of led you to follow his or her footsteps. That's also fine. And then when you moved to Barclays, you talked about how you were very strong in academics, which sort of put you in a good position to go into Barclay. That's fine. So you're telling me what made you qualified for Barclays, but you're not telling me what made Barclays qualified for you. right? So what were you hoping to achieve in your job at Barclays? Like, for example, why not like something in IT, or why not something in like a heavy engineering setup, stuff like that? I think that would really help your interviewer know the background behind some of the stuff that you have done, right?
All right.
Um,
Sure.
okay, so for the other stuff, I think the startup story that you mentioned, I would flip it a little bit. So you talked about how you started working with your mother, and how you and your mother are running like a digital startup. I would flip it. I would talk about the startup first, and then talk about how it's more of a family business, and like you're in an advisory role, and it's primarily led by your family, right? So it doesn't come off as like, yeah, I just help out my mother in certain things, right?
Okay.
It's sort
Makes
of
sense.
make it a little bit more official. The tabla thing, I think, works really well. I think you mentioned you have a channel. Just wanted to know if it's a YouTube channel, or like SoundCloud, or something else. If it's
It's
YouTube, walk me through, like, okay, maybe, I have had a video with like 10,000 views. It's sort of, really made me really happy, and this is what my plan is. Just give me a little bit more context into your interests, and some of like tie it into your accomplishments. Does that help?
Yeah. So two questions there, Shavik. I want to understand what should
Yeah.
be the ideal length for the introduction as such, because I understand introduction should not be very, very lengthy and not too short. I think I made it a little too short. So that is one thing I just want to understand. And on the second
Yeah,
part, if you
so
can, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Okay. So
No, tell
one
me.
thing I think, so in my resume, if you would see, there's a slight work gap, if you could notice. So I'm not sure,
Hmm.
but I might get questioned on, why is there a work break? So the reason why I took a work break in between was because of I wanted to take a break to figure out. That's the reason that I tell myself, and that's the truth, that I want to figure out what I really wanted to do. It was more like a break to understand the goals that I want to accomplish, the short term and the long term, to get
Hmm.
more clarity. And I personally think there's no, I know it was more like a stigma in the society, but I just felt at that point of time it was very, very important for me to take that break and understand what I really want to do. But in interview, when I'm being asked, I know an honest answer might just be the best or the worst, depending upon who the interviewer is. So how should I put that across? Should I really tell them the honest reason, or should I tell them the honest reason besides telling them what I was able to do in that time front?
Yeah. Okay. So all good questions. So I will save the first one first. So in terms of the length of your introduction, there is no right answer here, really. So I mean, of course, you're not going to talk about it for 10 minutes, right? But whether it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I think it really, really depends. I think if your answer is really nice, and you're walking through some of your stories, and you're teasing some of your accomplishments, so what if it's 5 minutes? I mean, it's a question of, is your interviewer losing you? If your interviewer is losing you, then even 2 minutes may seem too long, right? So I would say at this point, because you're really far out, don't think about the length right now, right? Think about what you want to talk, and what you want to highlight within your past 4 or 5 years, right? So think about that more than the absolute length. And then once you feel you have a handle on what you want to talk about, then let's try to optimize for time and optimize for length.
Mhm.
I mean, I would say overall, just to like give you an answer, I think anywhere between 3 to 4 to 5 minutes is okay. Once it's like goes above 5 minutes, it's sort of pushing it, because even with the most interesting story, it's really hard to hold someone's absolute attention for more than 5 minutes. So one of the ways people do that is, like, let's say you want to like very briefly mention your work with your family, right? Like let's call it digital tech for now. So you can talk about, like, I've started working with digital tech, which is a startup that my family runs, and what I do with them is I look at investor relations, and I'm happy to talk about that more if you'd like. So you're still teasing it, but you're not giving it more details, and you're keeping the channel open. As a, hey, if that's of interest to you, you ask me a question and I'll tell you more about it, right? But you're not glossing over it. So that would be my response for your first question. For the second one, so help me understand. So your gap was, so in 2016 you started working for Barclays, right? So you worked there till 2019, and then you took like a year gap and then came back to Barclays. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
So so let me ask you this: when you told your boss, or like your boss's boss, whatever, that hey, I'm going to take a break for a year, how did they respond to that?
They, of course, did not respond very positively. That's every line manager in the world, I guess. But
Right.
I cited personal reasons, of course. I was not, on personal terms, I was not doing very well. And I really want to go back to my family to take care of things back home, and really wanted to figure
Right.
out what I really want to do. So I told them in the most straightforward manner possible. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think they agreed. Yeah, so I think I was very honest.
But they
I
took you
did not.
back though, right? Like
They did.
you were able to get a job again.
Yes, yes, yes.
So
So
I
I got
think
back.
so, right. So what I would recommend is, I mean, I think you should be honest, but like you should add more around what you did in that break. So you can totally say that, like after 3 years of working with Barclays, I just wanted to know what else is out there. So I took a break for 10 months out of Barclays, and I knew I was going to go back and make more impact. But within that 10 months, I focused on my YouTube channel. I focused on the startup with my family, and I was able to really dive deep into some of my other interests. And I'm really happy I took that break. And then when I got back to Barclays, I was even like more refreshed to work harder and focus on my goals. I think that's totally fine. I don't think that's a problem as well. I will recommend though, like putting that on your resume. Like if you were working for your startup with your mother, maybe put that in the resume
Yeah.
between those. I think that would be helpful. I mean, this is not a mock resume, but I think I had some bigger comments on your resume. I think your resume needs a little bit more work. So happy
I
to engage
haven't written.
further if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do it.
No, that's totally fine. You're not applying like a year from now, so you have a ton of time. So I'm not too worried. Awesome. So Shivangi, nice to know you. I think you had some really interesting background elements. So tell me a little bit more about why MBA and why now.
Okay. So I primarily have two reasons in mind, Shavik. One is primarily from the education perspective. The reason why, again, going back, I've been from an engineering background, and because I always had an inclination towards physics and tackling logical problems. Having said that, from the beginning, I have also been involved in a lot of management related aspects. When I say I've been inclined towards studying economics and a lot of leadership and management roles to understand how organization works as such. To kind of support my interests, I have also taken up various courses in economics and supply chain logistics. I've done a couple of that, but I
Okay.
think to substantiate all that knowledge, I personally believe that. Management is something that I'm really, really inclined towards. I think I'll be better off because somewhere I know I have that potential. That's one reason. The second one being because after joining Barclays, I had a wider exposure to the how organization works on the front. Because I have been on the front facing role to understand how what clients do, what clients demand. And besides that, I've been working with my mother to understand and to engage more clientele. So all these reasons have heavily contributed to a reason why I should be pursuing it right now.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So, okay. So this answer could be a little bit more structured. I think when people say why MBA, they're actually asking you what your goals are and why your MBA fit into those goals. So generally, the best thing that you can do for yourself in this answer is to start with what you want to do long term. So your like your big long term vision, right? So so start off with that, and generally a long term vision is less about I'm going to be a VP in like a big tech company, but more about what problem you're trying to solve, right? So, for example, when I was applying to schools, my long-term vision was mostly aligned with starting my own ed tech company, which I at that time I really wanted to do, and even now I still want to do that. um, and I wanted to say that with this problem that, hey, like, look, I've been an engineer, I've been a product manager for ed tech, and I've also been a teacher. And I think one of the things that we miss in education, especially in the middle school, high school phase, is this. I had like a problem
Problem statement.
statement, like a hypothesis, and I want to be able to solve that. So in the long term, I want to start my own ed tech company that focuses mostly on this. So that's my long-term goal, right? So my long-term vision, the big problem that I'm trying to solve. And then now, in order to do that, I want to be able to, launch products at scale. I want to, like manage a product end to end, all the way starting from how to think about, like features and product ideas, working backwards from customers, and then work with engineering, marketing to deliver that product and then improve it over time. So now, to be able to do that, I want to get into a product management role right out of my MBA, maybe at like a Microsoft or a Google or Amazon, and then which will prime me for my long-term goal. So I sort of explained my short and long-term goal, and then an MBA is perfect for this because I've spoken to this and this person who said product management is really a popular career choice for people to go to Ross. And so at Ross, some of the things that I would like to do is X, Y, and Z. Happy to talk into more detail. So I think that, as you can see, the structure is basically like the big problem that you're trying to solve, your long-term vision, your short-term goal, why MBA can help, and what are some of the gaps that you can fill today. So it's all about like, look, I want to get here, but I'm here right now, and there's this gap, and I'm working to fill this gap, but the MBA would really help me close this gap. So that's sort of the bare essential of the answer. If you say, which what you were saying, that you're going for mostly the education and the academic element, the problem with saying that is, like, you don't have to go to a business school for that. Like, you can go to University of Delhi, or you can go to wherever you want. You can study physics, you can study economics, you can study whatever, right? You don't really have to do an MBA. An MBA is a much more career focused professional degree. So I think tying it to your short and long term goals would be really helpful.
All right. Can I give it one more try? I think I missed out on talking about the
Yeah,
long term and short term goal. So if you
totally,
could just
totally go
sure.
for it. Yeah.
All right. So keeping my long term and short term goals in mind, long term, as I already mentioned, I the digital startup that we kind of work on right now is a basically handicraft related startup. We collaborate with the artisans and the handicraft workers all across India and sell their products in the most holistic and natural way possible. So I think that's something that I really want to work upon in long term as such. Involving more of the artisans and kind of give them kind of a pavement to kind of sell their products. So that's something that I look upon in the long term. How an MBA can help me is to analyze the right channels and the right method to leverage my existing abilities. I think that's one reason. Second being a short-term goal. Since I've already well versed with the product management perspective, combining my interests, I really want to kind of understand in a more holistic way how banks work, the financial institutions work, because it's not just about what the techies do. It's about how you run an organization, overall. So I think when I am able to achieve my short-term goals, they will ultimately contribute to my long-term goals as well.
Okay. Okay. I think overall, definitely better answer. I like it. I think here you over-indexed a little bit on your long-term and short-term goals. I think I didn't see the MBA element as much. Like, you want to talk about, like, look, ac- academically, I want to get this from my MBA. Professionally, I want to get this from my MBA. And extracurricular wise, I want to get this. So those elements do need to be there. Also, one quick feedback on the long-term stuff and the short-term stuff. Like, I understand that you want to, go back to your startup maybe and like, take over or something like that. But you need to tell me a little bit more into, what your goals are. Maybe you want to scale it. Maybe you want to
Yeah.
make sure,
Okay.
it reaches more people. So just tell me the exact problem that you're solving.
Okay.
And the second thing with your short-term goal, you talked about, like you already had some experience with product management. You want to learn the financial side of things. That's great,
Yes.
but you need to give me like a specific role or a specific function. Like post MBA, I want to join X, Y, and Z company, whatever, as as like a, I don't know, like a financial analyst or a finance manager and stuff like that. I think that would sort of make it a little less vague and make it something that you can totally do, right? And that will also help you to talk about your MBA. Like, oh, by the way, to achieve these short-term goals, these are some of the things that I need to do in my MBA program.
All right.
Does that
I
help?
just have one question. Yeah, that does. So there's just
Yeah,
one question that I would like to ask. There were these
yeah,
really two, if I'm really, really specific, there were two options that I actually drilled down to. One was consulting and one was supply chain. Supply chain I can substantiate because I have already taken up courses and I know what the course is about. When I say
yeah,
consulting, I've had a very periphery level experience with guesstimates and estimations, how things work and what are the basics that you need for consulting. But if I tell the interviewer
yeah.
that I want to join consulting, a counter question could be, how do you know you're going to be good at it? That's something that you take a decision. If you know X, you take a decision Y, right? You cannot just randomly take a decision Y. So, is there something that I can
Right.
fill in between to kind of substantiate my answer? If I have to, the reason why I didn't drill down to the specifics was because of this.
Yeah. So basically, like, look, I mean, I can guarantee you that your interviewer will never ask you, how do you know you're going to be good at it? That will never happen. What can happen, though, is the interviewer can have some doubts about whether you can make it to consulting, right? Like
Mhm.
from your experience and from your background. And like
Correct.
generally speaking, and so what you want to do is it's not about what you can get into and what you cannot get into, at least at this stage. It's not about that at all. It's a lot more about what makes the most sense for you. And look, once you come into business school, you can do whatever you want. Like you can, it doesn't matter. Like nobody's gonna hold you to your essays. Like Shivangi, you said you're gonna be in consulting. Like why are you recruiting for investment banking? Like nobody will say any of those things. What your interviewer is looking for is, can you make have you okay can you make the connections between what you want to do long term versus what you want to do short term, right? And how that will help to get your goals. I think the supply chain thing makes a lot more sense because of your long term vision. For
Mhm.
consulting, if you can weave into a story that, hey, look, I mean, I have had a lot of experience in Barclays, but I want to do this startup, and what I really want to learn is, like how to run a company, how to talk to, like CXO level people, how to convince them of my recommendation. And consulting is like the best space to do that out of business school, which is why I want to join BCG after my MBA, and mostly in the maybe in the retail or the social impact sector, where I'll have a first-hand experience that will help me when I come back and run my own startup. I think that's totally fine. You can totally say that.
All right. Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Okay, so then let's move on to some of your experience level question. I think we spent a lot of time on the goals and the MBA stuff, which is awesome. I think these are important questions, and when you get to writing your essays, you will have stuff to write about. Like what are your goals, why the school, and you'll have to answer these questions all over again. So I think this will be very helpful once you get to that space within your essay writing. All right, Shivangi, can you tell me about a time when you had to take a really difficult decision? What was at stake and what was the outcome?
Sure. So I'll go back to 2017. It was one of my first task as a technical delivery manager, and I think my second very important delivery from Barclays, which is the travel wallet application. long story short, we had the go live was very critical and during the change freeze. So a lot of because of lot of technical glitches, our team was we were still able to kind of meet the timelines, but because of a lot of technical glitches due to other component teams, we had to kind of delay the release, which was obviously which did not go down well with the stakeholders, because it was the launch of a very, very important app. And after a lot of brainstorming and debating, it so happened that the stakeholders and the wider leadership still were okay to kind of kind of give ahead a primary level launch, but I was not okay with it, because I kind of understood the amount of efforts it would involve again. So I kind of debated out the trade-off, and I was able to convince my team to delay the launch at least by a day or two to kind of mitigate that risk that happened, which I think was very important in the long term, because as a bank, the reputation that we kind of give to our customers is very, very important. So I think that took more priority, and I was able to convince them successfully. And it was it was very important for me, because I was very, very new to the role, and of course the trust level which you have to gain during that point of time is very, very critical. So I was kind of happy I was able to drive that through.
Okay, cool. All right, good answer. I think this is a good story. I think the thing that you mentioned at the end, like why was it really important to you? I would bring it into the front, right? So generally, like behavioral questions like these, there's like there are a lot of different structures that people use. I like to follow a structure called CAR. So basically, I talk about the context first, which is the C. Then I talk about the action, what I did, and then the results. So that's sort of like the bare bones structure. So I would first recommend, like, okay, I think you started really well. It was a travel wallet project, and what was at stake was it had a huge impact on our customers. Then it was especially important for me because I was so new. This was a way to prove myself, but B, also in order to make any impact, I had to earn my team's trust, which was really challenging because I was so new. So I had to make sure, like whatever I was recommending was data driven, was not, born out of just my intuition, and I could back up my claims. So say some of that or all of that to establish the context and get your interviewer to think, wow, this was like a really big deal. So I'm really glad you are talking about this. This seems like a very meaty experience. So other than that, I really liked it. I think you had the results come in. I would maybe try to quantify the result a little bit, but other than that, I think it was a good answer. So does that help? Do you have any follow-up questions?
No. So I think this was more like a real life situation, and I think the terminologies, I think I could just replace, like you said, data driven, and all the other terminologies. I think I could work on that.
Cool. Okay. So let's get to one more question. I think it's supposed to go on for 30 minutes. We're already at time, but let's try to look at one quick question before we end. So, can you tell me about a time when you had to disagree with someone? Why did you disagree, and what was the outcome?
Okay, so I think it just happened 3 weeks. It's very, 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 very new. I before a change phase time, I had 5 projects on top of my head. I was back-to-back deliveries, and one of the project was a very typical business lending project. We usually within a team we have our SLAs defined, and the customers and the stakeholders demanded the delivery within a week, which was not possible, because of the standards and process that we follow, unless it's a regulatory project. Second, I had to prioritize my work because I had to be fair to all the stakeholders. So that's when I just challenged the delivery on the day one itself, as a result of which we were able to deliver the project within a shorter timeline, but that actually led to the stakeholders understanding that as a team and as a technical delivery manager, it's very, very important that we give equal importance to all the projects. Just because it's the demand from a particular customer or a particular stakeholder does not mean that we kind of do not balance the work. That's one thing. I
Right.
I disagreed because the timelines and the process was not being followed. I think towards the end, they it was very important for them to understand. So they understood that they would not
Hmm.
do that next time. Second, I was able to realize that I still had the potential to deliver maximum projects in the minimum timeline. So I think
Okay.
that was the outcome of the entire situation.
Okay. Cool. Tell me, how did you feel about this answer?
Not very well. I had to kind of, I want to give out more details, but of course I could not. Uh, there was a lot of
Sure.
argument. There was a lot of argument that happened between me and the actual project stakeholder. It involved a lot of
Hmm.
leadership from my team as well. Uh, in the end, of course, he
Right.
understood that it was my side that was correct because I had the support of my leaders. But the details is something that I couldn't put in a very effortless manner. So I want to kind of
Yeah.
read a proper paragraph or something.
Yeah, I think, look, first of all, most people who I interviewed in this mock interview series yesterday and day before, they were all applying this year, right? And they had interviews lined up in like a week or 2 weeks. So I was a lot harsher to them. But because you have so much time left, I think you don't need to worry about all this. But I think what I would want from you for this question is a little bit less around what was at stake, but more about the emotional element of what you disagreed with and why, right? So, generally, when you talk about the disagreement question, it generally comes to your values, right? So, maybe you value customer satisfaction more than your company's revenue. I'll give you an example. One common disagreement answer that I think works really well was like this dilemma between, do we ship the best thing to our customers and make them really happy, or do we try to get as much revenue as possible, right? And Amazon's a really good example. Like, right, for example, they have this no question ask refund process, right? And that, I'm sure that hurts them, right? But think about it. Somebody who was probably a product manager or something, somebody recommended that. Like, when a customer asks for something, we should not ask them, oh, okay, did you really buy it? Was something really wrong? We should just refund it. And I'm pretty sure somebody said, no, of course we will not do that. That's crazy, right? Because that's going to lose us so much money. People will, like, just do fraud returns. And I'm sure there was a lot of disagreement, a lot of convincing. So in the end, I think regardless of the outcome, the reason why the disagreement becomes interesting, so it becomes a barrel of values. One person is valuing the company's revenue, and one person is valuing the customer's experience, right? And so when you talk about disagreement, I would want you to think in that lens. Like, why were you disagreeing with something? What was your primary value that was, governing your decision making so that you disagreed? So I would push you to think about those things, and then frame the answer. Like, tell me what was at stake, then tell me who did you disagree with and why, and then maybe like how did you come to a consensus, how did you make a decision, and what was that journey like? Does that help?
Yeah, that does. So, just one question. So, like I said, I had a
Yeah,
lot
go
of
ahead.
details to share, but I couldn't. So, it was there was a lot of argument, like like I mentioned, a lot of argument and a lot of
Yeah,
negotiating here and there. And the reason why I didn't budge was because just because a particular D or C level director or anyone has a certain number of
sure.
contacts in an organization, and they can make their way through, does not mean we take that situation for granted, right?
Hmm.
We cannot set back the deliveries of all the other projects. So that was something I really
Sure.
wanted to kind of paraphrase in my answer, which I could not. That's because
Yeah, be a
that's
little clever about it. Like, be a little
yeah,
bit more, tactical about it. Like, you don't want to come off as someone who never agrees with people, right?
exactly.
So tell me, tell me the big elements of that whole thing without going into the details. But also, this is also an opportunity for you to show empathy, right? So don't forget to say stuff like, "Look, I mean, I totally understood that person's point of view. Like, that person is a C-level executive, and his main job is to make sure that everything happens on time, right? But one of my goal was to make sure that we ship all of our projects and finish each and every single ones that we committed to. So that's where the disagreement was. So that's fine. I think as long as you're showing, a healthy amount of empathy and a healthy amount of skepticism, I think you'll be okay. But if you can maybe find another example where you can talk about more details and where you can, there's no confidentiality and you can actually get into the meat and the heart of the problem, I think that should be fine too.
I will do that. Yeah. It makes sense.
Cool. So we are definitely out of time, but this was super helpful. I really hope we do a mock interview season in a few months, and then once you have decided which schools you want to apply to, your timeline, we can do this again. But thanks so much for coming here. It's never really easy to do a mock interview live with like other people watching, but I'm really happy you made the choice to come here and spend some time with us.
Thanks, Souvik. Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. Well, we'll be back tomorrow again for a set of interviews. I think we are starting at 6 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So that's going to be fun. But other than that, thanks so much for coming here, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sure. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.